15. Black celebrities whose lives were cut short by HIV, AIDS, and hidden illnesses. They were icons, voices, bodies, and minds that shaped culture and defined generations. Stadiums echoed their names, radios carried their sound, and millions believed success made them untouchable. But behind the spotlight, something far more powerful was at work. Illness does not recognize fame, talent, or legacy. In this video, we uncover the untold health battles that quietly cut short 15 remarkable Black lives, not to sensationalize, but to understand what history rarely explains. Stay with us until the end because one story may challenge everything you think you know. Subscribe to Legends of Black Excellence and join the conversation that refuses to stay silent. Arthur Ashe. Arthur Ashe was never just a tennis champion. He was a symbol of composure, intellect, and quiet strength in an era that rarely afforded Black athletes the luxury of complexity. Born in 1943 in Richmond, Virginia, Ashe rose through a segregated system to become the first Black man to win Wimbledon, the U.S. Open, and the Australian Open. By the mid-1970s, he had secured his place in sports history not through raw aggression, but through strategy, discipline, and an unmistakable sense of dignity that set him apart from his peers. Beyond the court, Ashe carried himself as a public intellectual. He wrote extensively, spoke against apartheid in South Africa, and challenged racial injustice in the United States, even when doing so threatened his career. To many Americans, especially older fans, he represented a reassuring ideal success earned through restraint, education, and moral clarity. Few could have imagined that behind this controlled exterior, a silent medical tragedy was already unfolding. In 1983, during a second heart bypass surgery, Ashe received a blood transfusion that was later confirmed to be contaminated with HIV. At the time, blood screening was still limited, and the virus went undetected for years. By 1988, severe neurological complications revealed the truth. When Ashe publicly disclosed his HIV status in 1992, he did so not for sympathy, but to confront stigma with facts and humanity. How many public figures today would choose honesty over privacy in a moment like that? Ashe's health declined rapidly. He lost significant weight, suffered repeated infections, and required frequent hospitalization. On February 6, 1993, Arthur Ashe died at age 49 from AIDS-related pneumonia. Yet his legacy did not end in illness. Through the Arthur Ashe Foundation for the Defeat of AIDS, he helped redirect national conversations toward compassion, research, and responsibility. Arthur Ashe proved that greatness is not measured only by trophies, but by how one faces truth when control is finally taken away. Kevin Peter Hall. Kevin Peter Hall was a presence long before audiences ever knew his face. Standing at 7 feet 2 inches tall, he became one of Hollywood's most unforgettable physical performers, best known for bringing life and movement to characters that relied not on dialogue, but on stature, timing, and controlled intensity. Born in 1955 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Hall came from a family of remarkable height, yet he refused to be defined solely by size. He earned a degree in theater and approached acting with disciplined intellect and patience traits rarely associated with creature roles, but essential to his success. Throughout the 1980s, Hall worked steadily in film and television, appearing in productions such as Predator and Predator 2, where his performance gave the iconic character weight, rhythm, and menace. Industry peers respected him not as a novelty, but as a craftsman who understood how to communicate emotion through movement. Away from the camera, Hall was known as soft-spoken, thoughtful, and deeply private, focused on building a long-term career rather than chasing instant fame. In December 1990, Hall's life changed abruptly following a serious car accident in Los Angeles. Emergency treatment required multiple blood transfusions, standard medical practice at the time. Months later, he began suffering from unexplained fevers, respiratory distress, and extreme fatigue. Testing confirmed he had contracted HIV from contaminated blood, a tragic consequence of incomplete screening procedures that affected many patients in that era. His condition deteriorated rapidly. By early 1991, Hall's immune system had collapsed, leaving him vulnerable to severe pneumonia and systemic infection. Despite intensive care, his body could not recover. On April 10, 1991, Kevin Peter Hall died at just 35 years old. Though his life was brief, Hall's impact endures. He reshaped how physical roles were respected in Hollywood and remains a sobering reminder that illness does not discriminate by talent, discipline, or character. Gil Scott-Heron. Gil Scott-Heron occupied a space few artists ever reached: the intersection of music, poetry, and social truth. Born in 1949 in Chicago and raised between Tennessee and New York, he emerged in the late 1960s with a voice that sounded less like entertainment and more like testimony. His work fused jazz, blues, and spoken word into narratives that confronted racism, media manipulation, addiction, and political hypocrisy. Long before hip-hop had a name, Scott-Heron laid its philosophical groundwork. Albums such as Pieces of a Man and Winter in America positioned him as a chronicler of Black life in turbulent decades. His delivery was calm but piercing, reflective, rather than explosive, forcing listeners to sit with uncomfortable realities. Unlike many performers of his generation, Scott-Heron never softened his message for commercial success. That integrity earned him deep respect, but also kept him on the margins of mainstream fame. Behind the clarity of his words, however, Scott-Heron struggled privately. Years of substance dependency took a toll on his health, and by the early 2000s, he was experiencing recurring hospitalizations. In 2001, it became public that he was living with HIV. The illness progressed slowly but persistently, weakening his immune system and limiting his ability to perform consistently. Yet even as his body faltered, his creative instinct refused to disappear. When an artist's body begins to fail, does their voice lose power or gain urgency? In 2010, Scott-Heron released I'm New Here, a sparse, reflective album recorded during a period of fragile health. It was not a comeback in the traditional sense, but a final statement, quiet, restrained, and deeply human. In May 2011, following a European tour that visibly exhausted him, he was hospitalized in New York. He died on May 27, 2011, at age 62 from complications related to long-term illness. Gil Scott-Heron's life was not cut short by silence, but by struggle. His legacy endures in every artist who dares to speak truth without compromise and in every listener willing to hear it. Alvin Ailey. Alvin Ailey transformed modern dance by placing Black experience at its emotional center without turning it into spectacle. Born in 1931 in Rogers, Texas, and raised during the era of segregation, Ailey carried memories of church music, Southern resilience, and quiet endurance into a career that would redefine American performance. After moving to Los Angeles, he studied with Lester Horton, absorbing a disciplined technique that later became the backbone of his own artistic language. In 1958, Ailey founded the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, creating a permanent platform for dancers of color at a time when opportunities were limited and visibility was scarce. Works such as Revelations did more than showcase movement. They translated collective memory into motion-blending spirituals, blues, and modern form into something unmistakably American. By the 1970s and 1980s, his company was touring internationally, performing in more than 40 countries, and serving as a cultural ambassador during the Cold War. Privately, Ailey was intensely reserved. He guarded his personal life carefully, choosing instead to let choreography speak. In the late 1980s, close colleagues noticed changes, fatigue, neurological complications, and increasing hospital visits. At a time when stigma still surrounded HIV and AIDS, Ailey kept his diagnosis largely private, even as his health declined. Alvin Ailey died on December 1, 1989, at age 58 from complications related to AIDS. His death shocked the arts world not only because of his stature, but because it exposed how even the most disciplined bodies were vulnerable to illness during that era. Yet Ailey's legacy did not pause. His company continued, his technique spread globally, and Revelations remains one of the most frequently performed modern dance works in history. Alvin Ailey's life reminds us that cultural impact is not measured in longevity alone. Sometimes it is measured in how deeply a single vision reshapes generations that follow. Rudy Ray Moore. Rudy Ray Moore carved out a lane in American culture that no one else dared to enter. Born in 1927 in Fort Smith, Arkansas, Moore built his career outside traditional Hollywood power structures, relying instead on raw, hustle-sharp humor and an unapologetic sense of black expression. Long before independent film became fashionable, he wrote, financed, and starred in his own projects, creating the legendary character Dolomite, a figure that blended street folklore comedy and bravado into something entirely new. During the 1970s, Moore became a defining voice of the blaxploitation era. His films, albums, and stage performances thrived not because critics approved, but because audiences connected. He sold records out of car trunks, packed theaters without studio backing, and influenced generations of comedians and rappers from stand-up stages to hip-hop lyricism. To many fans, Moore symbolized freedom, the ability to speak loudly, live, boldly, and answer to no one. Behind that larger-than-life persona, however, Moore faced serious health struggles later in life. Public records and family accounts confirm that he battled long-term complications related to diabetes, a condition that quietly worsened over decades. In his final years, his health declined sharply, with repeated hospitalizations and organ stress linked to metabolic disease. How often do we overlook chronic illness because it lacks the drama of scandal or headlines? On October 19, 2008, Rudy Ray Moore died at age 81 in Ohio due to complications related to diabetes. While rumors have circulated over the years, there is no verified medical evidence linking his death to HIV/AIDS or sexually transmitted diseases, making accuracy essential when discussing his legacy. Saying no to misinformation matters, especially when honoring pioneers whose work reshaped culture. Rudy Ray Moore's life was not shortened by controversy, but by an illness millions quietly endure. His influence lives on in independent cinema, comedy, and music, proof that lasting impact comes not from approval, but from fearless originality. Eazy-E. Eazy-E, born Eric Lynn Wright in 1964 in Compton, California, was one of the most disruptive forces in modern music. As a founding member of NWA, he helped propel West Coast hip-hop from local reality into a national reckoning. His voice, nasal, sharp, and unapologetic, became a defining sound of late 1980s rap, delivering street narratives that many found uncomfortable but impossible to ignore. Eazy-E did not polish his image for approval. He presented life as he knew it, and that honesty reshaped an entire genre. Beyond the microphone, Eazy-E was also a businessman. Through Ruthless Records, he played a central role in launching careers that would later dominate global music. His influence extended far beyond chart positions, altering how artists viewed ownership, independence, and creative control. By his late 20s, he had achieved a level of cultural impact that most performers never reach in a lifetime. In early 1995, Eazy-E was hospitalized with severe respiratory complications. On February 24th, he publicly announced that he had been diagnosed with AIDS. Medical reports indicated that his immune system was already critically compromised at the time of diagnosis, a reminder that HIV can progress silently for years without obvious symptoms. How many lives might have been extended if testing and education had arrived earlier and without stigma? Despite aggressive medical care, his condition deteriorated rapidly. Just over a month after entering the hospital, Eazy-E died on March 26, 1995, at the age of 30. His passing stunned fans, peers, and the music industry alike, cutting short a career that was still evolving and forcing public conversations about HIV into spaces where they had rarely existed. Eazy-E's legacy is not defined by illness, but by transformation. He altered the sound structure and business of hip-hop forever. His story stands as a powerful reminder that cultural giants are still human and that awareness, access to healthcare, and early intervention can mean the difference between a chapter ending and a story continuing. Howard Rollins. Howard Rollins possessed a rare intensity that made audiences lean forward rather than sit back. Born in 1950 in Baltimore, Maryland, he emerged from the theater world with a presence that felt both vulnerable and commanding. Trained at New York's prestigious institutions, Rollins built his reputation on stage before breaking through on screen, earning critical acclaim for performances that conveyed inner conflict without excess. He was never a decorative actor. Every role carried weight. His film career reached a peak in the early 1980s with Ragtime, which earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Soon after, he became widely recognized for his lead role in the television series In the Heat of the Night, where his portrayal of a principal detective brought depth and dignity to network television. For many viewers, especially older Americans, Rollins represented a shift black characters written with complexity, authority, and emotional realism. Yet while his professional life gained momentum, Rollins struggled privately. Substance dependency and recurring health issues disrupted his stability, leading to missed opportunities and growing isolation within the industry. By the mid-1990s, his health had deteriorated significantly due to untreated infections and systemic complications. Medical records later confirmed that overwhelming sepsis and organ failure caused his death, highlighting how delayed treatment can turn manageable conditions into fatal outcomes. Howard Rollins died on December 8, 1996, at age 46. His passing received far less attention than his early achievements deserved, overshadowed by narratives that focused on personal struggle rather than artistic contribution. Yet revisiting his work today reveals an actor ahead of his time, one who helped redefine what serious black dramatic performance looked like on American screens. Rollins' life was not shortened by irrelevance but by unresolved battles beyond the spotlight. His legacy endures in the performances he left behind and in the reminder that brilliance without sustained care is still fragile. Jermaine Stewart. Jermaine Stewart emerged during the 1980s as a symbol of optimism wrapped in rhythm. Born William Jermaine Stewart in 1957 in Columbus, Ohio, he found his artistic footing as a dancer and vocalist before stepping into the spotlight as a solo performer. His breakout hit, We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off, climbed the Billboard charts in 1986 and became an enduring anthem celebrated for its upbeat sound and its rare message of restraint during a decade known for excess. Stewart's music carried a brightness that resonated with mainstream America. He appeared on major television programs, toured internationally, and cultivated a public image that felt approachable rather than confrontational. For many listeners, particularly adults who remember the era, his songs represented a gentler side of pop, danceable, joyful, and free of cynicism. Yet the industry he navigated was far less forgiving behind closed doors, especially for artists who valued privacy. In the early 1990s, Stewart's career slowed as his health quietly declined. He was diagnosed with HIV at a time when treatment options were limited and public understanding remained clouded by fear. Rather than turning his illness into a headline, Stewart chose discretion, continuing to work when possible and maintaining distance from speculation. When fame fades and health becomes fragile, who truly remains present, the audience, or only the silence? By 1996, complications had intensified. Stewart suffered from liver-related illness linked to advanced HIV, leading to repeated hospitalizations and growing physical weakness. On March 17, 1997, he died at age 39 in Illinois. His passing received little media attention compared to the height of his success, a reminder of how quickly popular culture moves on. Jermaine Stewart's life was cut short, but his voice remains intact, echoing from radios, dance floors, and memory. His story underscores a quiet truth: behind cheerful melodies can exist unseen battles, and behind every hit record stands a human being whose story deserves to be remembered with care and accuracy. Essex Hemphill. Essex Hemphill was never interested in comfort. His work existed to challenge it. Born in 1957 in Chicago and raised in Washington, D.C., Hemphill emerged as one of the most uncompromising literary voices of his generation. A poet, essayist, and performer, he wrote with clarity and courage about race, sexuality, masculinity, and belonging, at a time when many of these conversations were deliberately avoided. His words did not ask for permission. They demanded recognition. During the 1980s and early 1990s, Hemphill became a central figure in Black gay literature. His collections, including Ceremonies and Conditions, blended personal reflection with sharp social critique, exposing the emotional cost of invisibility within both Black communities and mainstream America. He performed widely not as an entertainer but as a witness, using language to document lives that history too often erased. For many readers, especially those who came of age before broader cultural acceptance, Hemphill's work offered rare validation. Behind the intellectual force of his writing, however, Hemphill faced serious health challenges. He was diagnosed with HIV during a period when medical options were limited and stigma remained severe. Later, he developed aggressive cancer linked to immune system suppression, a complication that worsened rapidly. Despite declining health, Hemphill continued writing and engaging publicly, refusing to retreat into silence. By the mid-1990s, his condition had deteriorated significantly, leading to repeated hospitalizations. Essex Hemphill died on November 4, 1995, at the age of 38. His death marked the loss of a voice still expanding in depth and reach, one that had only begun to influence academic, cultural, and activist spaces. Essex Hemphill's life was cut short, but his impact was not. His words remain studied, quoted, and needed, reminding us that speaking honestly, even when it is uncomfortable, is sometimes the most enduring form of legacy. Willie Ninja. Willie Ninja, born William Roscoe Leake in 1961 in New York City, was a visionary who carried an underground art form into global awareness. Long before ballroom culture reached mainstream fashion and music, Ninja stood at its center, precise, elegant, and uncompromising. Known as the godfather of voguing, he transformed sharp, angular movement into a disciplined performance language that blended athletic control with theatrical grace. In the 1980s and early 1990s, his presence redefined what dance could communicate about identity, confidence, and survival. Ninja's influence extended far beyond ballrooms in Harlem. He worked with major fashion houses, appeared in films and music videos, and coached models on posture, movement, and self-presentation. What set him apart was restraint. Every gesture was intentional, every pause meaningful. To many observers, especially those discovering ballroom later in life, Ninja represented mastery without noise, authority without arrogance. He was proof that excellence could rise from communities rarely given resources or recognition. Privately, however, Ninja faced mounting health challenges. He was living with HIV during a period when treatments were improving but still unevenly accessible. Over time, complications associated with long-term illness affected his vision, cardiovascular health, and overall strength. Despite these setbacks, Ninja continued teaching and mentoring, determined to pass knowledge forward rather than retreat from public life. When a cultural pioneer becomes a teacher instead of a performer, does their influence diminish or deepen? Willie Ninja died on September 2, 2006, at age 45, from complications related to heart failure following years of illness. His death resonated deeply within the ballroom community, and beyond, marking the loss of a figure who had quietly shaped fashion, dance, and self-expression across generations. Willie Ninja's life was cut short, but his legacy moves on, visible in runways, music videos, and stages worldwide. Every sharp line and confident pose owes something to the man who taught the world how to move with intention. Fela Kuti. Fela Anikulapo Kuti was more than a musician. He was a force of nature who fused sound politics and personal freedom into a single defiant identity. Born in 1938 in Abeokuta, Nigeria, and educated in London, Fela returned home determined to create music that spoke directly to power. By the late 1960s, he had birthed Afrobeat, a relentless blend of jazz-funk, Yoruba rhythms, and extended improvisation designed not for background listening, but for confrontation. Across more than 50 albums, Fela used his music to challenge corruption, military rule, and Western interference in Africa. His Lagos nightclub and communal compound, the Kalakuta Republic, became both creative headquarters and political target. Arrests, beatings, and censorship followed, yet his resolve hardened. To audiences worldwide, especially those who lived through the Cold War era, Fela symbolized artistic courage without compromise. Behind the public rebellion, however, Fela's health declined over time. In the 1990s, close associates noticed prolonged illness, fatigue, and recurring hospital visits. In 1997, his family publicly confirmed that Fela was living with AIDS, a disclosure intended to end speculation and misinformation. At the time, effective treatment in Nigeria was extremely limited, and stigma remained widespread. When truth finally emerges, does it diminish a legend or deepen our understanding of their humanity? Fela Kuti died on August 2, 1997, at age 58, from complications related to AIDS. An estimated 1 million people attended his funeral in Lagos, a testament to the reach of his voice and the loyalty of those who saw him as more than an entertainer. His passing marked not just the loss of a musician, but the end of a movement led by one man's refusal to be silent. Fela's life was cut short, but his influence was not. Afrobeat continues to inspire global artists, while his uncompromising stance reminds the world that music can challenge power and survive its creator. Yvette Wilson. Yvette Wilson was a familiar and comforting presence to American television audiences, especially those who came of age in the 1990s. Born in 1964 in Los Angeles, California, she built a career grounded in warmth, humor, and emotional accessibility. Wilson first gained national recognition through her recurring role on In Living Color, where her comedic timing and expressive delivery allowed her to stand out in an ensemble filled with strong personalities. Her most enduring work came through sitcoms that emphasized community and relatability. On Moesha and later The Parkers, Wilson portrayed characters who were witty without cruelty and confident without arrogance. For many viewers, particularly older audiences, she represented a kind of television comedy that felt grounded in real life, less about shock value and more about connection. She made people laugh without demanding attention, a quality that earned long-term affection rather than fleeting fame. Away from the screen, Wilson lived far more privately. In the late 2000s, she was diagnosed with cervical cancer, a disease that disproportionately affects Black women due to disparities in screening and early treatment. Despite undergoing medical care, the cancer progressed aggressively. Wilson chose not to center her public identity around illness, stepping back from acting as her health declined. By 2012, complications had spread to multiple organs, placing severe strain on her body. On June 14, 2012, Yvette Wilson died at the age of 48. Her passing was met with an outpouring of tributes from colleagues and fans who remembered not scandal or controversy, but laughter, kindness, and consistency. Yvette Wilson's life was cut short, but her work continues to play in reruns and memories. Her story underscores an important truth. Visibility does not guarantee protection, and behind familiar smiles can exist battles that deserve awareness, compassion, and honest conversation, especially when it comes to women's health. Jessica Petway. Jessica Petway belonged to a new generation of Black women who built influence not through traditional fame, but through authenticity. Based in the United States, she became widely known as a lifestyle and beauty influencer, sharing content centered on family self-care, faith, and everyday resilience. Unlike celebrity culture built on distance, Jessica's appeal came from closeness. Her audience, many of them women navigating work, motherhood, and health, saw someone relatable, grounded, and emotionally present. Through social media, Jessica documented moments of joy and vulnerability with calm honesty. She spoke openly about personal growth, marriage, and parenting, creating a space that felt more like conversation than performance. By the early 2020s, her platform had grown steadily, not through controversy, but through trust. For older viewers observing the digital age, she represented a shift influence driven by connection rather than spectacle. Behind that steady presence, however, Jessica faced a serious medical challenge. She was diagnosed with cervical cancer, a disease closely linked to delayed detection and disparities in women's healthcare. Publicly available information confirms that her illness progressed rapidly, despite treatment eventually affecting multiple organs. Throughout this period, Jessica continued to emphasize awareness, encouraging women to take their health seriously without framing her experience as fear-driven or sensational. How many lives could be changed if early screening were treated as urgency rather than option? In 2024, Jessica Petway passed away at the age of 36. Her death resonated deeply across online communities, not because of celebrity headlines, but because people felt they had lost someone they truly knew. Messages of grief reflected gratitude for her transparency, her strength, and her willingness to speak when silence would have been easier. Jessica Petway's life was cut short, but her impact remains meaningful. Her story stands as a modern reminder that illness does not spare those who inspire quietly, and that awareness, early care, and honest conversation are as vital online as they are offline. Behind every achievement we celebrate, there are truths history often softens or ignores. The stories shared here are not meant to define these figures by illness, but to remind us how fragile even greatness can be when health access to care and awareness fall short. Progress in medicine has saved millions, yet disparities still persist, especially in Black communities. If these lives unfolded today, would the outcomes be different, or are we still repeating the same silence? That question remains open. Share your thoughts, challenge the narrative, and join the conversation below. This is Legends of Black Excellence, where legacy is honored and hard truths are not avoided.